Today I'm going to show you how to make this Lovecraftian tentacle monster fly through the desert sky. Hey everybody, today I am going to do a follow-up to my Lovecraft video. And today we're going to do Lovecraft Tentacles. I'm going to do another quick video just to show you here how to make the tentacles move in Blender just using wind. And it should be pretty simple. So let me just start with the very first thing I did here was I added a sphere, just a basic, let's see, I started with mesh and I did a UV sphere. And then I went into sculpt mode and I turned on the X symmetry, and I also turned on, well, I had it turned on anyway, dynamic topography. And that way the topography will automatically fill in as you are sculpting. Then what I did is I just used a combination of the draw brush and the, let's see, I think the inflate brush. And I just created, I simply went around and just used these two brushes to pull out certain aspects of the sphere that I had in order to get like this creepy looking thing. We are going to go in and define a vertex group that we're going to apply our hair to. So to do that, I'm going to go into modeling, and here you can see all of your vertices, and I'm going to turn on, again, symmetry is turned on, so that will be nice. And then what I'm going to use is the select tool. I'm going to use circle select, and then I'm just going to go through and select, oh, interesting, this does not select. I thought that this would select using symmetry, but maybe not. Maybe not. All right. Well, I tell you what, I am just going to go through and highlight the vertices that I'm going to create my vertex group out of. And I'm just going to have to use, do my own symmetry here. Go ahead and save that. So what we're going to do is go to particle properties. We are going to add a new particle system. We are going to set it to hair. And again, looks completely crazy here. I'm going to reduce the number of particles down to something a little more manageable. So we'll go down to 100. And then what I'm going to do is reduce the length. So we're going to shrink this down. So we'll do something like this. Then on the render, trying to remember, first thing I need to do is go back here. And we're going to change, instead of using Eevee, we're going to use cycles. This looks so much better in cycles. So we're going to do cycles. We're going to do GPU. And then down under hair, I think rounded ribbons seems good. Under curved subdivisions, yeah, power of 2. So let's switch to the rendered mode. So when you're in cycles, the hair doesn't render and you can't really see what's going on here. So what we need to do is switch to viewport shading. And you can kind of see a little bit of an improvement over the and we're having a lot of artifacts related to our sculpting. We'll fix those up later too. But what I'm going to do is let's go back to our particle system, and we're going to start adjusting what it actually looks like. So under the, let's see if I can find this. Let's start with our emission first. So the source of the emission is going to be the faces, and we are going to use a jitter distribution, jittering amounts. All of that actually looks fine, so I'm not going to worry about that. On the hair shape, what we need to do is set the tip and the root. So the scale currently is very small, so we're going to just raise up. You see, as you increase the scale of your hair, this is multiplying the root and the tip. So if you want a very pointy tip, you leave it at 0. If you want to make it a little bit fatter at the tip, right, then you can raise this up. I'm going to go somewhere about like that. The other thing that we notice is that everything is just straight. So this is where we want to add some of our hair to react to a wind source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, maybe instead of wind, we can use another type of force. And let's just use a turbulence node. And you see that when we added that node, immediately the hair is looking like it's starting to bend a little bit, right? And so by doing that, that is a good thing. The second thing we're going to do, and if you look down at the turbulence, here is under our, what's this called, physics properties. So here is turbulence, and for the strength, if we add it even more, you see this starts to get our bendiness even greater. The next thing we need to do is move the hairs to only sprout from the, or have the tentacles, I should say, sprout from the vertex group that we had created earlier. So what I'm going to do is go back to our particle system. We have our emission. We have our hair shape. If we go down to field weights, this covers forces, okay. Vertex groups, here we go. So what you want to do is set the density vertex group to hair. And what you'll see immediately is now we only have hair sprouting out of the areas where we had determined our vertex groups, or the vertex group was assigned. So this way, you can limit hair from coming out of other areas. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add another force field, and we're going to add wind. So the wind force is going to combine with the turbulence. So this kind of gets back to what you want your scene to look like. So assuming these stalks here are kind of like his eyes. Yeah. Let's move our wind over this way. And then I believe if you press RR to rotate, maybe not in this mode. Nope, it does work. If you press RR, you can rotate this to point directly at the model. And that way you can get your wind pointing in the direction that you would like. Makes it a little bit easier. So I have a wind and a turbulence. Okay, so if I look at my turbulence, I have it set up fairly high. The strength is at 30. I have the wind also set, or sorry, that's not the wind. The wind strength, I have it set to 5.5. Now, the one thing is, I would really like these tentacles in the back to have a little more activity, and it doesn't appear that the wind here is reaching them. And actually, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to bring this down a bit more, and I'm going to have this one actually blowing up. Yeah, like that. Now I'm going to move this down. So we're going to have this one going in the up direction. So now you see not a lot's going on here. I'm going to raise the strength. And you see it's just lifting these up a bit. Now that I think about it, I could even animate this value. You know what? Why don't I do that? Instead of having consistent values, so we'll just tag it here. Add a keyframe. We'll go along for a little bit, and then we'll lower it down. Keyframe that. So now these look kind of like some sort of creature floating. The other thing I'm going to do, so to keep currently he's just sort of sitting in one spot. I'd like him to move around a little bit. So I'm going to delete the bake. So as you can see here, it's almost like it's some sort of fish. He's kind of moving around. Gives him a little bit more life. Kind of looks like a fish swimming in the ocean. So the next thing I wanted to show you is if you don't want the tentacles clipping through the emitter, you click on the emitter, so your object, and you need to go to physics properties and click collision. That will add the collision physics property, and then you need to rebake your particle. So delete and rebake your particle system, and that way it will not clip through your emitter because it will be colliding. The next thing I did was frame up my camera. So what I did was I got a viewport or a viewpoint that I liked, and then you simply do align view, align active camera to view. So Control Alt Numpad 0. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do today is we need to start putting some materials on the model that we have here. So what I'm going to do is go to shading. So I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to create a new material for our body here. So I'm going to go ahead and click new. And I think for our base color, we are going to use, let's see, it's been a little bit of a, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some nodes. So for texture, let's go ahead and use, I think, a Musgrave texture. And we're going to move this. We're going to go ahead and add a color ramp. Let's see, converter, color ramp. So we'll take the height, plug it into here. We'll take our color going into here. Okay. And now that is sort of giving a pattern. So I think if you have Node Wrangler, I think it's Control T on your keyboard once you click on the Musgrave texture, and this will allow you to control the scaling of the texture. And so what I'm going to do is, let's see, I think we're going to use the object coordinates. Correct? Yep. That looks pretty good. And then on the scaling, I actually kind of like the look of the scale that we have. Although I will show you briefly, if you want to adjust the scale here, you can obviously slide it in this way and adjust it. If you want to do it as a single value that controls all of them, what you can do is do input value, and then you plug this into the scale here like this. Okay, so then as you control this value, it's adjusting the X, Y, and the Z. So I do like the look of this. I think on the tentacles, I'm actually going to apply a different pattern than what I'm using for the body. So what I will do is we're going to create another material. So I'm going to add another material here. And the first material, we'll call this one the body. All right. Excuse me, the second material. Create a new material here. We'll go ahead and call this one the tentacle. Now we have to apply that material pattern to the tentacle. So we're going to go to our hair. We'll just rename our particle system tentacle so we don't get confused, because we are going to add another particle system here. Just a second. So we'll do that. And then under, let's see, render material, yes. So you see here, currently it defaulted to the first material. So we're going to shift this to the body. So now the body material is separate, and we have our tentacle material. So for the tentacles, let's see, we just have a default material here. And what I'm going to do is, I think what we're going to do is, let's see, let's add a texture. Okay, so what I've decided on here is the best texture I'm going to use is I'm going to use the Voronoi texture. And what you see here is I've added this for our tentacles, but it's really coloring the entire tentacle. And the reason you see this kind of look is because the texture coordinate that I'm using is using generated. And what you need to do is switch this to object. And once you do that, you see that this is now, that Voronoi texture is coming through. Now we can adjust the scale here. So we can adjust this scale here, and we can adjust this scale here as well. So whichever you're comfortable with. I do kind of like this speckled look. So the question is, how speckled do you want it? It's all personal preference. I think I'm going to go with something like this. I think that looks really, really nice. It really brings out the tentacles. And so I really am going to stick with that. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some additional very fine hair over the entire body. Okay, I really like the look of this. So let's move on. We're going to create one more particle system. And we are just going to call this hair. Yeah, you could do so many neat things with this. You definitely could add little babies on top of it or something like that. But we're just going to stick with hair. Now, looking pretty wild there, right? So we have our tentacles, and now we just have these hair particles. We'll give these another material later. We'll just probably do like a pure black on that. So for our hair, it's definitely a little too long and a little too many of them. So we're gonna bring down the number. Yeah, well, I do want a little bit more than that. Okay. I actually kind of like having some long ones like that. Yeah, I really do like that. So I think what I'm going to do is bring down the overall number just to have a few like this, tentacles, very fine hairs poking out. And I even like the length of that. I think that's really nice. All right, so I'm going to add one more particle system. And we're going to call these, instead of hair, we're going to call this fur. So fur is going to be like very thin amount of covering over the body. We're going to change this to hair. We are going to drop the length way down. And just for a minute here, I'm going to hide these. And I'm going to hide the tentacles even as well. So we can just see the fur. And what we're going to do is increase the amount. Okay. And I'm going to add children here too. So we're going to do simple children, which adds a substantially higher number of hair particles. Okay, I really, really enjoy this. That just looks fantastic to me. So I think as far as the tutorial goes, you can really play with this a lot. You can do all sorts of things. The one reason I wanted the fur is it kind of hides some of the joints where the tentacles are connecting to the body. So yeah, I really like the look of this. As far as rendering speed, one thing I want you to do is turn on adaptive sampling. Okay, so we're going to turn on adaptive sampling, and what this does is we can jack up the render amount, but it will preferentially determine how many samples it needs to take to render it cleanly. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to do some compositing real quickly. So I'm going to switch over to our compositing node. I'm going to say use nodes. We have our render layers here. One thing we want to do is turn on if you go under view layer properties, you want to turn on denoising data, okay? And that way we can add a node here, and it is under filter, and you want to do denoise. So this is going to clean up the image. And what you do is take the denoising, take the noisy image, put it here, the normal here, albedo here, take the image. You can add glare. I'm going to take the image from here, put it down here, and our output goes like this. Okay, let's see. So now if we add another output to viewer, take the same image and put it in to both our composite and our viewer. Now what you need to do is you need to do one more render so that you can see your image. We're going to render. Okay, beautiful, looks great. So now that we've rendered it, you can see, you can use this for your compositing. You can see it in the viewer in your item here. So what we want to do is, instead of streaks, I want to change this to fog glow. Okay, great. And the next thing we want to do is, I think we want to have our amazing creature here sort of floating above a landscape. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go download an HDR, and then we're going to introduce that HDR into our scene here. So let me go find that. Okay, so to add our background, what you need to do is go to World Properties. We're going to go to Color, and you click on the yellow. Color, and we are going to choose Environment Texture. And this is where we need to select our HDRI that we downloaded. So if we go back to rendered view, now you see the HDRI that we've downloaded. The angle of the HDRI is not exactly what I'm looking for. Well, at least the angle of my camera is not what I'm looking for. So what we need to do is I need to adjust where my camera is so that I get the framing of the HDRI in relation to my creature here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the angle of the camera that I have. So right here, so I'm going to adjust my camera so that it is looking a little bit higher up over here on the left. So rather than the top-down view, I'm going to shift this over. You can see that the camera is kind of in a, let me get to a different view here. So we're going to go to, let's say, front view. And you can see that the camera is sort of up looking down. And that's why over here I'm sort of looking at the ground. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my very first frame, and I'm going to lower the camera like this. So now we're getting this much, we're getting the horizon. You can see more of the horizon, right? And I'm going to go ahead and keyframe this here. So you can either hit I, or you can right click and hit replace keyframes. Okay, I figured out the problem that I was having, and here's the issue. Instead of using a damped track constraint, you need to use a locked track constraint. This way, while the camera is rotating around, it will maintain its rotation. So currently I'm using -Z and Y as my locked axis. So the final changes that I've made to my project is that I added a RGB to black and white node to the compositing. So this takes the HDRI that we imported earlier in, let's see, the global settings. So the HDRI that we imported, that's color. And so I wanted this to be all in black and white. So I just take the image coming from our glare node, put it into RGB to black and white, and then use that for compositing. I made that change. And also I did some tweaking and rebaking of the hair animations on the particles. So you can see that all of these tentacle, hair, and fur, these are all now baked. And I extended it out to 600 frames. Overall, I rendered this at let's see, I used cycles, and I ended up rendering this at 1920 by 1080. And which is interesting because I upscaled it when I did the video portion. Yeah, so I rendered this out. It took about 20 minutes on my machine, and that's because I dropped down the number of samples fairly low, down to 32. But the final output looked pretty good. This is simply for demonstration purposes and not like a final product or anything. So I think the quality meets the needs. Overall, you know, these types of projects, there is some playing around with the different settings, you know, adjusting your materials. There's so much time that you can spend into this, so I apologize if this video seemed a little chopped up in places, but I'm trying to give you just the main points that are there and not spend too much time, you know, going through just tedious tweaking of, you know, what my material looks like. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. This gives you an idea of how to do Lovecraftian style tentacles that are manipulated by the wind and other forces. So go out, give it a try, and I hope you have a great day and a safe day. Thanks. Bye. Please hit that subscribe button below if you enjoy this type of content. Thanks. Bye.